Here is, for your consideration, the holy triangle of light, is the source of the Holy Trinity, contended in numerous religious institutions. The Father, Son, and Holy Ghost of the Trinity morphs as prime creator, creator Son, and eternal spirit of the holy triangle of light. The all-seeing eye adorns the center of the centerfold of the pyramid, as you see. Prime creator at the apex, and the all-seeing eye in the centerfold. The holy triangle of light. This holographic reality is made of 5 general frequencies, known as the 5 Platonic solids. They are the icosahedron, the tetrahedron, dodecahedron, octahedron, and hexahedron. Polyhedrons, which exist in 3 dimensions, height, width, length, as geometric objects composed of flat sides. In the Timaeus, Plato, an initiate of the mystery schools, and the Great Pyramid, discourses about how each solid is related to one of the 5 elements. The hexahedron represents the earth and the mineral masses. The octahedron represents air and the gases. The tetrahedron represents fire and energy, and the isosahedron represents water and liquids. The final Platonic solid corresponds to the ether, or the spirit. The spirit is the intention that organizes the other 4 Platonic solids, the 4 elements, according to what it wishes to manifest. In many forms of classical artwork, the 4 earthly elements are symbolized by 4 cherubim, the angels of the pagan world, who are often depicted as animals with wings. The 4 cherubim working form the 4 corners of the cosmos, hold the material world in place. The sun god is the 5th element who dissolves matter by spiritualizing it. It is all related to 6th-dimensional sacred geometry and the 5th-dimensional light body. A spiritual transformation is now purging Earth of all negativity. Earth will ascend to the 5th dimension. However, this comes to pass via the planetary logos headed by an ascended master who speaks on behalf of the spiritual hierarchy. On March 21st, 2013, at the spring equinox, the Platonic solid, governed by the intent of the eternal spirit, will be morphed into a higher vibrational state, and the planetary Merkaba vehicle will be activated. The following diagram illustrates this point. For your consideration, the planetary Merkaba vehicle. When ascension occurs, one exits the earth plane and linear time at 90 degrees. One will ride the elevator, so to speak, up the ascending dimensions on the vertical gravitational plane, which holds together the vibrational frequencies that keep our bodies intact, the 1st through 9th dimensions on the Pleiadian dimensional scale. When linear time is exited, one's consciousness is transported to the only moment in time, which is the present moment all things become possible. Time is not linear. It is like a loop that goes full circle and comes back to where it started. It is not time that moves, it is energy. And when energy moves or changes form, it creates the illusion of time. Ascension is living fully in the present moment with no misconceptions about time. Past and future are only projections of the eternal now. Your consciousness is the embodiment of the eternal now as your subconscious and superconscious minds hold the knowledge and wisdom of the entire universe, as well as unconditional love and compassion. The following diagram illustrates this point. The XY plane is the circle, 2D representation of our space-time continuum, and the Z plane is the arrow traveling up from the middle, the elevator which carries one's consciousness to the eternal now. There you are, linear time exited at 90 degrees. The Gregorian calendar, instituted by Pope Gregory VIII by decree signed on February 24th, 1582, reformed the Julian calendar to match the Mayan calendar on 2 dates, October 28th, 2011 and December 21st, 2012 at 11:11 a.m. A German mathematician named Christopher Clavius was hired, and he assembled a team to match these dates, along with the spring and winter equinoxes. This was desired by the Pope and the powers to be because 11 is the number of mastery in occult lore, and 22, 11 plus 11, is the number of ascension. October 28, 2011 is a date predicted by the Mayans to have a great significance on the space-time continuum of the planet, of this planet. On this day, time is supposed to speed up to such an extent that people will start to shift in and out of the fifth dimension, since in this dimension there is no time or space. The calendar we use today is altered to match 2012, although those in positions of power would never admit that. These 2 dates, October 28th, 2011 and December 21st, 2012, also correlate with the process of DNA transmutation. Since that is what this process is about, there are 64 possible codes of amino acids in our DNA, from 20 amino acids and 4 atoms to carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen. We should have all 64 codes activated, but we only have 20. After 2012, the other 44 codes will be activated. Gods of heaven and earth. The post-diluvian earth is under the jurisdiction of demonic extraterrestrials, especially the Anunnaki and Draconians, and the subjugation of the population is advancing its course. Sir John Dee was court astrologer and ambassador to Queen Elizabeth Tudor and was embroiled in opening up portals to other dimensions during his life's work. In fact, many pre-industrial scientists, cosmologists, and chemists were master occultists. Throughout the centuries, the black nobility, black Venetians, under the direction of the fourth density reptilian factions, have employed alchemists, necromancers, diviners, and clairvoyants to predict the future and communicate with these higher dimensional beings. Famous personages like Robert Boyle, Count Saint-Germain, Cornelius Drabel, Casanova, Nostradamus, Machiavelli, and Cornelius Agrippa have been used in the past by these evil powers as conduits for placation. Many celebrities, even today, live double lives. They participate in black magic rituals and call upon evil spirits for guidance and protection. In the past, the gods of heaven were also the gods of earth. Upon inspection of documents and tablets from antiquity, it becomes abundantly clear that everything beautiful and worth worshiping was brought forth from the gods. Who were these gods, and why did they have human characteristics? In the Bible, much of the Old Testament works to describe the origins of the Hebrews, saying they descended from the Sumerian city of Ur around 2000 BCE. This group of people was ruled by a personality, God named Jehovah. He is the supreme God of the Jewish canon, and his name derives from the Hebrew word Yahweh, meaning is, was, and always will be. The early biblical narrative tells of Jehovah convincing the early Hebrews to leave Ur and travel to Haran, a caravan center in the northeastern Mesopotamia. The clan's patriarch Abraham was then told by Jehovah to migrate towards Egypt. When they settled in Goshen, they lived peacefully under the Pharaoh, but a change in reign led to the Hebrews being forced into slavery and servitude. After 400 years of toil, a man named Moses led the slaves on an exodus out of Egypt and through many bloody battles to the land of Canaan, the promised land, granted to them by their God, Jehovah. Thus, according to the Bible, the Jewish religion was born. That is why Jehovah, Yahweh, is the God of the Jewish canon. It is also evident that Moses was chosen by Jehovah to lead the conquest of the new monotheistic religion, escaping Egypt and the Pharaoh's grasp. Egyptian history, according to the high priest Manetho, unveils much about Moses and his childhood. Manetho states in his writings, Moses, the son of the tribe of Levi, educated in Egypt and initiated at Heliopolis, became a high priest of the brotherhood under the reign of Pharaoh Amenhotep. He was elected by the Hebrews as their chief, and he adapted to the ideas of his people the science and philosophy which he had obtained in the Egyptian mysteries. Proofs of this are to be found in the symbols, in the initiations, and in his precepts and commandments. The dogma of an only God, which he taught, was the Egyptian brotherhood interpretation and teaching of the Pharaoh, who established the first monotheistic religion known to man. This brotherhood was none other than the brotherhood of the snake, and it was under the guidance of Jehovah, and that the Hebrews wished to instill their new religion throughout the world. Early teachings of Judaism were deeply mystical, employing many symbols from the brotherhood. Most of these axioms have been deleted from the official Hebrew scriptures, but many are still utilized today in the Kabbalah, which is guarded over by a secret sect of Jewish rabbis. The six-pointed Star of David has been a symbol of the brotherhood of the snake for thousands of years, and it appears on modern Israel's national logo. Who was Jehovah really? According to Alex Collier, Jehovah was an extraterrestrial who used technology to promote himself as God. And it was the fear issued to the minds of the people which served as their capitulation. A major controlling factor was the water supply. When the extraterrestrials controlled the water supply, they controlled the people, because water was necessary for life. The languages and social structures were also introduced by the extraterrestrials, as well as the letters and their numerical values. Just as one religion stems from a previous one, language follows suit. All the modern languages spoken today can be traced back to ancient Mesopotamia and the early Indo-European languages. Jehovah was only one of the extraterrestrials fighting for power over Earth, his competitors being Marduk and his offspring. Each had their own groups of humans who worshiped them, but it was only after much bigotry that they decided upon a truce. In the biblical account, the Nephilim were the giants, the progeny of the gods, but they were also known as the Magi. During this interbreeding process, there were predominantly 13 families from Orion, Sirius B, and Nibiru, who established bloodlines. When the progenitors of the bloodline families left Earth, they abandoned the old technology, referencing the Vedas from ancient India. This was the technology Saddam Hussein found and partially activated in Iraq. He was attempting to open up a stargate, a dimensional portal in Iraq, in hopes of bringing in the Anunnaki. The Magi were left with certain types of technology proving useful in mind manipulation and space travel. Other technology was left buried and is still being discovered by archaeologists all over the world. Of course, you were never told this. As the Magi were left in charge of Earth, they interbred themselves among their own families and also other families who weren't part of the original bloodlines, but exhibited many of the same characteristics: greed, superiority complex, occult philosophy, etc. The priesthoods were erected as an inner circle of initiates who were bequeathed the knowledge handed down by the ruling bloodlines and their extraterrestrial counterparts. These priesthoods are discussed at length in ancient Sumerian and Egyptian lore, and every major religion has one. Each religion has its canon, scriptures, and its origin, priesthood. Just as the Magi were left in charge of Earth, the Greys under the control of the Draconians were left in charge of the space around Earth. They were sent here to manipulate the social structures of the planet, so when the Draconians graced the Earth with their presence, once more there would be two categories of humans on Earth: royalty and worker. Over the past 200 years, the focus for this goal has been the United States because it is the freest country in the world. In fact, the whole hierarchy of the manipulation of planet Earth can be mapped out. It has even been reported that the reptilians living underground are responsible for 32,000 missing children in the United States in the last 25 years. That is a staggering number. They usually fast for several weeks at a time, but when it is feeding time, they go into a frenzy. The royal members of their kind get first meat, and the victim is always brought into a state of terror because the adrenaline is a high for the reptilians. That is why it is mainly children who are eaten. They are pure of toxins that exist in most adults, and they frighten easily. The violence in movies, television, and video games is desensitizing to the youth of the planet, which is why not only there is so much physical violence in our society, but also non-physical violence, angry thoughts, and emotions. Above all, the virus of life is religion, organized religion. The major monotheistic religions of the world have kept ancient knowledge for themselves, feeding the public lies and testimony. They do not want an informed population because that is too self-empowering. The way the ancient peoples worshiped the extraterrestrials with advanced technology is no different than the way people today worship Jesus or Muhammad. History repeats itself. People today give away their power just as the ancient people did. Before Judaism and Christianity, the ancient Greeks and Romans worshiped the extraterrestrials and wrote about them often. Is it any wonder why the Greek gods were anthropomorphized? It is because they weren't really gods. They were extraterrestrials who were advanced and powerful, but who had human characteristics. The Greeks inserted anthropomorphic gods into nearly all their stories. The gods intermingle in human affairs in Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. Hesiod was a Greek shepherd who composed the Theogony, a literary work describing the birth of the universes and the gods, from whence all human life then came. The Greeks are not specific concerning where mankind came from, but they do say that certain heroes and famous figures were the offspring of a male god and female mortal, or vice versa. According to Hesiod, first there was chaos, the great void. From chaos spewed Gaia, earth, and Uranus, the heavens. The two were lovers, and they produced the 12 titans, 6 males and 6 females. Cronus and his sister Rhea procreated and brought forth 3 sons and 3 daughters, Zeus, Hades, and Poseidon, Hestia, Demeter, and Hera. Just as Cronus had overthrown his father Uranus, Zeus did likewise, and Cronus was disposed by castration. Many battles between the gods ensued after this period, the main altercation taking place between Zeus and Typhon, a serpent deity. Zeus won, and he was proclaimed king of the gods. Although he had to share rulership with his brothers, Zeus was given the skies, Hades the lower world, known in popular culture as hell, and Poseidon was given to the seas. The 6 children of Cronus and Rhea came to make up the upper half of the pantheon of 12, the lower half composing the offspring of Zeus. When the Romans adopted the Greek pantheon, they altered the names, and many came to represent celestial bodies. The original Greek pantheon of 12 consisted of the Titans, male, Oceanus, Hyperion, Coeus, Cronus, Creus, and Leptis, female, Mnemosyne, Tithys, Thea, Phoebe, Rhea, and Themis. When the Titans battled Zeus and his brothers and sisters, it was the Olympians who wrested away command and ultimately the pantheon. The adaptation of the Greek pantheon of 12 were the Olympians, male Zeus, Poseidon, Ares, Apollo, Hephaestus, and Hermes. Female was Hera, Athena, Demeter, Artemis, and Aphrodite. The 12th member of the pantheon came to be Dionysus, who was a male, making 7 males in all, although he was not a female. Dionysus was always described as being very effeminate and womanly. He was the god of wine and fertility, and was also in charge of carnivals, ceremonies, and ritual worship. When the Romans adopted the pantheon of 12, they changed the names which appeared as such: Zeus, Jupiter, Poseidon, Neptune, Ares, Mars, Apollo, same, Hephaestus, Vulcan, Hermes, Mercury, and Hera, Juno, Athena, Minerva, Demeter, Ceres, Artemis, Diana, Aphrodite, Venus, Dionysus, Bacchus. In the Greek tradition, Zeus was placed on the island of Crete by his mother because it was prophesied that he would kill his father Kronos and take over the throne. This led to Kronos eating all his children save Zeus, who was able to flee to Crete and hide in a cave. After abducting the beautiful daughter of the Phoenician king of Tyre, Zeus had to flee Crete, and that is when he came to the Greek mainland. It is naturally agreed upon by most scholars that the Minoan culture on Crete was the precursor to the Greek civilization. The Greeks themselves never claimed their Olympian gods came from heaven. Zeus came to the Greek mainland by swimming from Crete. Aphrodite came via the sea from the Near East, Cyprus. Poseidon came from Asia Minor on a horse, and Athena came from the lands known today as Israel, Iraq, and Iran. There is very little doubt in most scholars' minds that the Greek religion came from Asia Minor and the Mediterranean islands. The relationship with the number 12 and the pantheon indeed came from Asia Minor and the surrounding lands. It is the same with the cultures from the Far East. The Vedas are a composition of hymns and sacrificial formulas, as well as general maxims attributed to the gods. Hinduism was the ancient religion of India and considered the Vedas to be its canon. They were written in an ancient Indo-European language, the predecessor of Sanskrit, Greek, Latin, and other European languages. When the Vedas were translated, many similarities were found between them, the Greek tradition, and other religious customs. Just like the Greek gods, the gods from the Vedas were all part of one large family. They married one another, fought one another, interbred with mortals, and interfered in human affairs. The head of the Devas was Kashyapa, him and his consort Prithvi, producing 10 children. This family made up the pantheon of 12 deities, each member given a sign of the zodiac and a celestial body. When Indra took over as supreme deity of the pantheon, he was known by the symbols of lightning and thunder, just like Zeus. He also had to share dominion of earth with his two brothers, Vivasat and Agni. These three can be likened unto Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Agni was responsible for bringing fire down from heaven so mankind could use it. In the Greek tradition, it was Prometheus who stole fire from heaven. One region of Asia Minor was known as Anatolia, and it is here where the Hittite civilization was birthed. The supreme deity of the Hittites was Teshub, and he was associated with thunder and lightning, also like Zeus. He was known as the bull worship being prominent in ancient Hittite culture, as it was in Greece. On Crete, the Minoan king Minos had a wife named Pasiphae, who mated with a bull, producing a half-man, half-bull child. This child was called the Minotaur, as bull worship is often depicted in Minoan artwork. Most of this type of artwork is accompanied by a cross symbol. This cross could be a depiction of the cross of the zodiac, and the bull worship could be a reference of the constellation of Taurus, the heavenly bull. When Teshub was rendered in drawing, he was usually seen sitting on a bull. His nemesis, Yanka, was a dragon, and he had to battle to achieve full supremacy over Earth. This translates to Zeus fighting Typhon. Yanka literally translates to serpent. Predating Hesiod's tale of theology, the Hittite version was known as the kingship in heaven. In this epic, Alalu is king of the gods, who has his position taken over by Anu. Anu, in turn, was defeated in battle by Kumarbi. There is little hesitation on the part of scholars in accepting the kingship in heaven as the forerunner to the theogony, as it was composed over 1,000 years previous. When the Hittite stories were translated, scholars were astonished to find that Sumerian pictographic signs, syllables, and whole words were contained within the works. It became obvious that not only did the Hittites study the Sumerian language, they also borrowed from the Sumerian pantheon of gods. Anu, Antu, Enlil, Ninlil, Ea, and Ishkur are names seen in both pantheons. When the Hittite people had migrated to Babylon, circa 1500 BCE, the Sumerians had long been departed. So how did their language, religion, and literature come in the hands of the Hittites? For this answer, we must look to another group of people encompassing the area between Sumer, Akkad, and Anatolia. In light of the facts that the Hurrians absorbed Sumerian religion and mythology, and that they commingle with the Sumerians in the 3rd millennium BCE, no connection is left unscathed. The Hittite gods of old were the gods from the Hurrian culture, which were the gods from Sumer. The Egyptians followed suit as well, borrowing from earlier religions, ideas, and pantheons. All Egyptian celestial affairs were governed by the divine number 12. The heavens were divided into 3 parts, each containing 12 celestial bodies. The afterworld was divided into 12 parts. 12-hour intervals composed day and night. The Egyptian pantheon included 12 deities, the head of which was Ra-Amun. Ra brought forth Gib, earth, and Nut, sky. His depiction was a winged globe, a symbol recurrently seen on ancient tablets from Mesopotamia. Hitherto, we have a storyline. The Romans adopted their pantheon from the Greeks, who adopted theirs from the Hittites. The Hittites were influenced by the Hurrians, who no doubt took their culture from Sumer. Akkad and Babylon were establishments which branched from the cities of Sumer, and they in turn influenced the ancient people living in India, who composed the Vedas. In this argument, the point of origin is, of course, Sumer, the land of the original gods who from heaven to earth came. Before 4000 BC, Sumer, the place all organized human life, appeared suddenly. Cro-Magnon man was abruptly transformed into Homo sapien. How did this happen so quickly and urgently? It is because everything on earth was bequeathed from the gods. It is bright as day that Anu, Jehovah, Marduk, Enlil, and the other extraterrestrials that came to earth were the gods, referenced in the Bible, the Eastern scriptures, the Greek and Roman cultures, and ancient Mesopotamia. Of all the thousands of tablets found and deciphered, a story was depicted, however fragmented. In this narrative, a race of reptilian extraterrestrial beings came to earth and created a worker class to mine gold for them. The workers called their gods the Nephilim, or when translated, those who from heaven to earth came. The gods who came down gave themselves a numerical rank based on sexagesimal numerical system. The highest number was 60 and was assigned to Anu, king of the gods. The pantheon of the gods consisted of 12 deities. The 6 male gods in the pantheon were given the multiples of 10, and the 6 female gods were given numbers ending in a 5. It is a palpable observation that the gods from the Sumerian tablets were the very gods from Nibiru. Nibiru was often illustrated as a globe with wings, an image glimpsed in many traditions. The pantheon of 12 gods from Nibiru has directly influenced the most ancient theological cultures, and as you will see, this has led to the clout witnessed today. Religious symbolism. Keeping in mind how history repeats itself, a panorama of pictures and symbols seem to echo throughout societies all around the world. Inherent in every picture is 1,000 words, or maybe even more. When one is confined to a particular area, it becomes difficult to see how an image can mean something totally opposite of what you think. One example is the Iron Cross, a cross with its arms splayed out in equal fashion on all sides. It was used as a military decoration issued by King Friedrich Wilhelm III of Prussia in Breslau on March 10, 1813, and was also given as a sign of bravery among soldiers and sometimes among civilians during the Napoleonic Wars, the Franco-German War, World War I, and World War II. Its meaning is, as above, so below, a dictum adopted by the Teutonic Knights of Malta and the Knights Templar. Before, it was a universal symbol denoting the similarity between the microcosm and the macrocosm, the atom and the universe, which is really just an elementary particle in an even larger universe. Furthermore, it was used as an official emblem of the German army from 1871 to 1915, and in 1956 symbolized the Bundeswehr, the new German armed forces. Black is a traditional color of the cross with red or white trim, although it takes on numerous forms. It replaced the German swastika when that symbol was banned and has since evolved into a wider variety of shapes and decorations. The Iron Cross has become very iconic in recent decades. It has been worn by bikers, skinheads, and hot rodders promoting nonconformity and a tough guy image due to its military connotations. Adolf Hitler used to wear the Iron Cross pinned to his uniform. American surfers endorsed the image in the 1960s, many plundering old war medals from their fathers and seeing the symbol as freedom from authority. The early Christian churches of the 20th century must have employed cynical overtones when adopting the Iron Cross as an official pennant. Kingdom Church places the symbol on the front cover of many of their magazines, and I don't know how many countless churches erect the symbol on top of their steeples. For those of you fundamentalists, you can buy online hardcore Christian memorabilia. For only a limited time, you can buy a Christian Iron Cross shirt that says, "Hardcore Christian, I am a prisoner of Jesus Christ." How ironic. the prisoners of war who saw this symbol on German military officers during World War II are now prisoners of the church's anointed Savior and of the church itself. The swastika is another major symbol that has cropped up almost in every culture. It represents a fire wheel, but in metaphysics, we call it a chakra. Both the earth and human body contain chakras, which are like spinning vortexes of energy denoting varying aspects of consciousness. The swastika can be depicted in many forms. It also represents the sun because it is like fire that spins around in a circle. When the sun's radiation field strikes Earth, it merges with the planet's electromagnetic field, and the effect looks sort of like a swastika. Of course, this can only be viewed from space, but the ancients knew this because they were in contact with aliens. No matter how it is depicted, the swastika generally stands for the same thing. The Hindu version is very interesting. Here we go. That's the swastika in its various incarnations, variations for your consideration, you, the esteemed viewer. The Hindu version is very interesting. Another symbol of the Christian church and Jesus is the fish. Many people put the Jesus fish on the back of their cars, a little idea of what it really means. The fish does not represent Jesus. It represents the constellation of Pisces. In 2005, an ancient church was discovered buried under prison ground in Israel. A large mosaic tiled the floor and depicted was two fish facing opposite directions and stacked on top of each other. This two fish picture is a classic representation of the age of Pisces. In the Bible, Jesus comes across two fishermen and says, "Come, and I will make you fishers of men," and later feeds an entire crowd of people with a few loaves of bread and two fish. Eventually, the fish would come to represent Jesus. The God of the Christian religion, predating Jesus, however, Dagon, was the Piscean fish god. The Catholic Pope does not represent Jesus. He represents Dagon. In fact, the mitre he wears is shaped like a fish and is the official fedora of the Dagon. Development of the mitre from the 11th century to the present time, for your consideration, you, the esteemed viewer, the mitre. One of the first historians in Babylon was Berosus, and he wrote about an animal called Oannes, whose body was that of a fish. He taught mankind the sciences and arts of every kind. How to build temples and compile laws. How to employ geometrical knowledge for practical terms. Oannes later became Dagon, the fish god. The hat the Pope wears is a direct offshoot of the symbol often attributed to Dagon. The Pope does not represent Christianity. He represents the Piscean age supposedly initiated in one common era. This too is untrue. The Piscean age actually started a century before the generally accepted dawn of the new era. Just as Dagon is the god of the Piscean age, so is Saturn the god of earlier ages. The cult of Saturn was originally a Semitic group who worshiped the god Saturn, referring to the planet Saturn. Saturn is also a pagan Egyptian god. Renderings of the god Saturn usually depict him bearing a sickle, along with the hammer held by Thor. The sickle and hammer combine from the memento of communism. In its primitive form, the swastika also resembles the hammer of Thor, as each side bears a resemblance of a stick hammer. Also, the sickle of Saturn relates to the sickle used by Zeus to castrate his father, Kronos. Together, the sickle and hammer represent both usurpation of the throne, sickle, and the power of authority, hammer. Black was the color attributed to Saturn, which is why black robes are seen everywhere today. When you graduate from school, you wear a black robe, the same black robes worn by judges. The mortar boards perched on top of graduates' heads represent the square mortar boards used by Freemasons for their plaster. It was how temples were built. A school, just like a courtroom, is nothing more than a temple. It is a temple where the god Saturn is worshipped. But in conventional society, these details are covert, not overt. Alumni is a Masonic word, and that is why when you graduate from high school or college, you become an alumni, an initiate in the great order of the god Saturn. The control of education in the United States lies in the hands of the Freemasons, who employ their symbols everywhere. When you pay tuition to gain entry into a university, you are disregarding your intuition to receive indoctrination concerning a condensed form of universal laws. When you receive a master's degree, you are in effect gaining a Masonic distinction in a particular degree. There are varying levels of initiation of Freemasonry, so you might hear that someone is a 33rd degree Mason. This is the highest level. Many Illuminati are at this level. Degrees are purely Sabian in nature. In ancient times, a person was given a degree when they effectively demonstrated that they, like the sun, had ascended to an exalted place. Once you had mastered the stars, hence master, you had acquired the next level of degree. The true meaning of graduation is gradual indoctrination. Judges and Roman Catholic priests wear black robes because they are above the law. They are the god Saturn imposing the law. Instead of a sickle, though, they carry a hammer, the hammer of Thor. Judges use the hammer or gavel to declare the law of the land. The law of the land is civil law and is governed over by the demigods. That is why when ships are approaching land, they must dock in the harbor and sign a certificate of manifest declaring all goods brought forth into the land. When your mother births you, she must sign a birth certificate. Just like a certificate of manifest, your mother must declare all goods she is delivering to the land. That is also why when a ship is in harbor, it is berthed in port. It is birthing goods to be brought onto the land, which are then under the rule of the demigods. When your mother's water broke before she had you, a parallel is drawn between her water and the harbor ships dock into. Maritime admiralty law is the law of water and the banks. You are in fact the property of the New York Stock Exchange. There is a code of numbers on your Social Security card which corresponds to a single dollar bill with the exact same code on it. Currently, there are nearly $7 billion bills bearing everyone's birth certificate number. Just as the goods brought forth from the ships are property of the law of the land, when you are brought forth into this world, you are the property of the New York Stock Exchange. That is why everything costs money. You are property, and therefore you must pay to live on the planet you were born on. People go to work every day because they must pay off the debt owed the Federal Reserve Bank when they loan the United States government money. The government gives the Federal Reserve everyone's birth certificate number as property and collateral for the loaned money. The Ten Commandments were said to have been engraved on stone tablets because of the expression breaking the law. When you break the law, you are metaphorically breaking the stone tablets carried by Moses. The reason judges sit on a 3-tier high platform is because it is a representation of the first 3 degrees of Freemasonry, blue degrees of initiation. This same tri-tier platform is encountered in the room inhabited by Congress. In Latin, bench means bank, and the judge rules from the bench because he is ruling from the bank. No matter what decision he makes, he will still get paid. Altars in many Protestant and Catholic churches are also 3 tiers high. Just as congregations at church stand up to recognize the entry of the priest, all must rise in courtrooms when the judge walks in. The same types of pews are seen in both churches and courtrooms, and this has been so for centuries. When you rise to pay homage to either the priest or the judge, you are in fact acting out the rising of the sun every morning. The game of tennis is a good analogy for the way courtrooms operate. When you play a game of tennis with someone, you hit a ball back and forth from the back court to the front court. When lawyers defend their clients, they bounce back and forth their statements between the defendant court and the prosecution court. The judge takes a recess because he is in court playing a game. When a witness is asked to place his or her hand on the Old New Testament, they are swearing that they will give an accurate and verifiable testimony. When they come up to give of their statements, they must ascend a platform in order to reach the witness stand. Judges sit on a platform a level higher because they are the authority. The audience sits on the first level. In church, you must usually ascend 2 levels before you reach the place where the pastor gives the sermon. He speaks from the 3rd level because in Egypt, it was always done that way. Also in ancient Egypt, the lawgiver was the sheriff and was always male. In today's society, the sheriff is usually male, and he represents the rift between she and he, the division between male and female. Males are usually dominant and expansive, while females are compassionate and passive. The law is very dominating. If you break the law, you go to jail, and the judge, who is usually male, has the largest vote. It is instilled in our minds that if you do wrong, you will be punished. The police do not help you when you get in trouble. They handcuff you. These are all patriarchal characteristics of a society. The Merkaba is a 3-dimensional star tetrahedron and represents the union between male and female. The badge worn by the Egyptian sheriffs was a six-pointed star, a two-dimensional representation of the three-dimensional star tetrahedron. This is another symbol for the god Saturn. Sheriffs in the Wild West also wore the six-pointed star, as do many still today. Ever wonder where the number 666 comes from? It is not a sign of the devil. It has to do with Saturn. Saturn is the sixth planet from the sun. Saturday, or Saturn Day, is the sixth day of the week, and Saturn's symbol was the six-pointed star, hence 666. Also, the sixth chakra of the human energy system is the third eye chakra. 6, 3 times wheeled, 666. Just as angels were always depicted with rings or halos around their head, Saturn is the only planet in our solar system with rings around it. When you get married today, you get married before the god Saturn, and a ring is exchanged. When Catholic monks shaved their heads during the Middle Ages, they did so in circular fashion. Another name for Saturn is El. That is why El appears as either a prefix or suffix to names of gods, peoples, places, and labels in the Bible. Elect, elder, elevated, Elohim, temple, circle, gospel, apostle, angel, disciple, Michael, Uriel, Raphael, Gabriel, Emmanuel, Bethel, and many others. When witches cast a spell on you, they are said to hex you. Hex denotes 6. When they do this, they usually chant a particular passage or phrase 3 times, hence 666. The word Israel is another representation of past themes. The elites are the international bankers who run the world today. Elites come from Israelite. Isis was the Egyptian moon goddess. Ra was the sun god of Egypt. Saturn was the god of the Elohim. Isis, Ra, and Elohim, Israel. As far as Islam, Mecca, the holiest site in Islam, houses a large black cube called the Kaaba that is worshipped every day. The same cube is found in Vatican Square. Black, of course, is the color of Saturn. Yahweh was known to the ancient Jews and Muslims as the Tetragrammaton, meaning the 4-letter God. When Yahweh was written down in ancient scripture, it was usually chalked as YHWH. The Kabbalah from Jewish mysticism comes from Kabbalah, meaning cube God. This is also where the Muslim god Allah comes from. When the ancient Semites worshiped their god, they gathered around a large black cube and walked in circles around it in ceremonial fashion. It is from this origin where the Masonic circling the square expression comes from. The G in the Freemason emblem denotes geometry, or God. These two correlating because the universe was thought to be based on geometric forms. Also, God was called the Freemasons the Grand Architect. That is why a compass and a T-square adorn the Masonic emblem. Just as people used to encircle their cube god Kaaba, Masons today use a compass and T-square to encircle their god of sacred geometry. Statues of gigantic black squares can be found in Santa Ana, New York, Denmark, Australia, and many other places. In Islamic myth, Muhammad ascended to heaven on the famous rock escorted by the angel Gabriel. The dome of the rock is an Islamic shrine erected on Temple Mount in Jerusalem in 600 CE. It was won back by the Israelites on June 7, 666. The dome's outer walls measure 60 feet wide and 36 feet high. 60 equals 6 times 10, and 36 equals 6 times 6, 666. The Templum Domini, a shrine constructed by the Knights Templar adjacent to the Dome of the Rock, was claimed to be the site of the ancient Temple of Solomon. To understand the Temple of Solomon, one must go back to Babylon. The conspiracy of religion today harkens back to the worship of the god Saturn and the number 666. Rome was not called so when it was first instituted. It was called Saturnia, or the city of Saturn. In many cultures, Saturn was associated with Lucifer and evil. With the fall of the divine feminine, the advent of phallic worship has also dominated society. The phallus, of course, represents a patriarchal society. The Leothale stone in England is a holy shrine depicting a large phallus. The Worldwide Church of God in Pasadena, California, has phallic-shaped bushes all along the perimeter. Countless other churches employ this symbol in architecture and design. Sculptures unearthed of the god Shiva show him often with an erect phallus. There is also a phallic sculpture in the Dead Sea Scrolls in Israel. Most churches' steeples are stone representations of phallic worship done in the early days predating Christianity and Judaism. The more we change, the more we stay the same. The United States today is no different than Nazi Germany in the 1940s. The group procedure of Christian kids and adults gathering around a pole with the United States flag perched on top is very symbolic, like the way men and women did in the Nazi religion, but they were not the first. Children gathering around a pole was a pagan ritual practiced in ancient Greece and Rome called the maypole dance. It was done before the advent of spring, the pole representing the earth axis, the phallus, and male fertility. Min was a Greek god exhibiting fertility, and its sculptures of unearth reveal him with an erect phallus. Min was also an Egyptian god, renderings of him showing likewise. The Bethel stone referenced in the Old Testament, the one Jacob used as a pillow, was not really pillow-shaped. It was in fact a stone representing a phallus in which the pagans of the ancient world poured oil over, signifying the anointing of the Christos. The Christos was not Jesus. It was a sexual ceremony practiced when choosing sons of God. The stone was called a lingam. An online encyclopedia has this to say about it. In the temples, there were smaller human-sized linga, or priapic statues of the gods, intended to deflower brides before their wedding night. This operation was what biblical terminology called opening the matrix. Firstborn children were regarded as fathered by the god upon mortal virgins because of the defloweration custom, which was prevalent not only in Southeastern Asia, but also throughout the Middle East and in Rome. Such divinely begotten sons of God were often chosen for lives of religious devotion. The phallus or lingam was usually painted red and anointed with holy oil, to which the Greeks gave the name chrism. Thus, the divinity begotten one was given the name of Christos, meaning anointed. Of course, oil was necessary to the insertion of the stone phallus into a virgin. Later, the oil itself became a symbol. Kings' heads were anointed with oil, being likened to the head of the god Penis. How interesting. Most people today are in no way cognizant of the fact that they covertly worship the god Saturn, a pagan star god whose symbol was the six-pointed star. The Star of David is not Jewish at all. Saturn was known in Talmudic Hebrew as representation of the Sabbath, or what was frequently called the Sabbath. So remember the Sabbath and keep it holy? No. Remember your patronage to the god Saturn. Shabbat references to the seventh day of the week in the Jewish calendar. In St. Peter's Basilica in Rome sits a statue of Jupiter that has been modified and retitled as a statue of St. Peter. Many thousands of Catholics who kiss the feet of the statue have no idea that it is in fact Jupiter. Everything unfolds from a single source. We are all Greeks and Romans worshiping the same God. Circe was a Greek goddess who maintained herself by hypnotizing men and seducing them, thereby taking their minds away and turning them into animals. Worship of Circe traveled to Scotland, where Circe became Kirk. The Scottish word Kirk then became church. In England, churches are money-making enterprises, and that is why they are divided into denominations, just like money. Did you know that? The Ten Commandments, large stone tablets believed to be truly iconic in the Judeo-Christian sense, are replete throughout medieval pictography. The laws themselves reverberate a spiritual significance. However, they have been used by the church as its own. Most fundamentalists think they were two large stone tablets carried in each hand by Moses as he descended Mount Sinai. Renderings of what most scholars would call tablets, in their most simplistic form, take the shape of two elliptical top tablets standing adjacent to each other, or in other words, two phallic-shaped stones. The phallus appears again, but this time with a twin. The twin phalluses represent the real Babel stone used to anoint the Christos. Two is of classic Masonic numerological symbology: two fish, two towers, two fishermen, two royal lines of DNA, reptilian and human. When people flash the number 2 with their fingers, a V is displayed. When Masonic pledges flash the V, they are not saying peace, man. The V represents two things: the chalice of the female womb and the Roman numeral 5. The 5 represents the fifth element. The fifth element, spirit, is close guarded by the Illuminati, who wish to keep the masses ignorant. Spirit is said to be all-encompassing, all-seeing, and all-knowing. The true meaning of the pyramid with the all-seeing eye on the back of the $1 is very elusive. Whether the eye represents the third eye of the Chitari, the right eye of Amun-Ra, or the hidden knowledge kept by Lucifer and his secret societies, parallels can no doubt be drawn between the two. While there are subtle nuances behind the eye, the meaning of the pyramid is concrete. We shall get to that meaning shortly. Brief intermission has been scheduled. Namaste, namaskaram.